At first, she thought it was just her imagination, a strange déjà vu when she looked at his old photos. But then she saw it. The same eyes, the same smile. Over and over again, every woman he dated looked exactly like her. And the deeper she dug, the more she realized this wasn't a coincidence. This was deliberate. And someone was next. The first time I saw the photograph, Dominic's apartment was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels empty, but the kind where everything is in its place. White walls, black sofa, glass coffee table, and one small plant by the window. It looked more like a model apartment than somewhere someone lived. It was a Saturday in late March. We had been dating for 6 months. Dominic got a phone call, stepped into the bedroom, and left the door half closed. While he was gone, I wandered over to his bookshelf. It was neat and organized, travel books, a few novels, and some work-related manuals. When I moved one of the paperbacks to check the title, I noticed something hidden behind it. It was a picture frame, dark and shiny. I pulled it out. The photo showed a woman sitting at a cafe table, holding a white cup. She had chestnut brown hair, parted on the right, falling over one shoulder. She wore a pale blue sweater, the same color I had worn the day Dominic and I met. She was smiling, slightly, like someone had caught her mid-laugh. She looked like me, not exactly, but close enough to make my chest tighten. Her jaw was a little narrower, her nose a bit sharper. But the way she sat, the way her mouth curved, it was almost the same. The bedroom door opened. Dominic came out, phone still in his hand. He saw the frame and stopped. "Is this your sister?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "No, someone I used to know." He took the frame from me, put it back behind the books, and asked if I wanted Thai food for dinner. I let it go. The next day at brunch, I told my best friend Evelyn about it. She's a music teacher with a sharp sense of humor. 6 months in and you find a hidden picture, she said. That's either romantic or suspicious. She raised an eyebrow. I laughed it off, but she could tell it bothered me. On my way home, my coworker Patrick called about a project. Patrick's good with tech, so I asked if he still had that tool for finding pictures online. He said yes. I didn't explain why I needed it. Later that week, I met one of Dominic's old friends, Marcus, when we all went out for drinks. Marcus is friendly and talkative. Dom hasn't changed, he told me. Still keeps everything lined up like a chessboard. When we stepped outside, he added, "When he falls for someone, he falls hard." A few days later, I met Victor, one of Dominic's coworkers, during a client event. He's polite, always seems to know more than he says. While we were on a break, he asked how I knew Dominic. "We're together," I said. He nodded. "He likes things to stay the same," he replied, and walked off. On Friday night, Dominic invited a few people over to celebrate a win at work. Victor arrived first, carrying a bottle of wine. Then came Rena, another lawyer, from his office. She had a quick smile and a calm way of speaking. She also looked familiar. Her hair was almost the same shade as mine, and something about her smile made me think of the woman in the photo. The evening went well, talk about art, work, travel, but every time Rena laughed, I saw that same tilt of the head, that same slight curve of the lips. It was like hearing a song you've only half remembered, but you know the tune. After everyone left, Dominic started cleaning up. I dried the glasses. "Rena seems really smart," I said. "She is," he agreed. "Sharp mind." He glanced at me. You okay?" "I'm fine," I said. But I wasn't. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about the frame, about Rena, about the comments from Marcus and Victor. I opened my phone and made a list. Frame behind books, Evelyn, brunch, Patrick, photo tool, Marcus, falls hard, Victor, likes same, Rena, looks similar. It was just a list, but looking at it, I knew I wasn't done thinking about it. I also knew I would look for answers, even if I didn't yet know how. It was a rainy Thursday morning when I saw them all together. I had come to Dominic's apartment early before work. He was still asleep. I went to the kitchen to make tea, and that's when I noticed his laptop open on the counter. The screen showed a gallery of photos, small squares lined up in neat rows. At first, I thought they were vacation pictures. I stepped closer. They weren't landscapes. They were women. Different backgrounds, one in a restaurant booth, another standing by a fountain, another leaning on a car. But the same type of face, the same kind of smile. Brown hair, some lighter, some darker. Similar builds. Even the way they tilted their heads looked alike. It was like looking at variations of the same person. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. People can have a type, but the more I stared, the more I noticed the small details, the clothing choices, the soft colors, the natural makeup. I felt a slow, cold unease settle in. I closed the laptop and made the tea. A few minutes later, Dominic came into the kitchen, hair still messy from sleep. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. I handed him a mug and tried to sound normal. That night, after we'd gone out for dinner, Dominic fell asleep on the sofa. I pulled out my phone and opened his Instagram. I scrolled back months, then years. There they were. Some matched the faces from the laptop exactly. A woman with her hair tucked into a scarf, smiling on a snowy street. Another holding a glass of wine on a rooftop. One standing at the edge of a beach, waves behind her. They were all different women, but the resemblance was too strong to ignore. On Friday, I met Evelyn for coffee and told her what I'd seen. She leaned forward over the table. "You need to find out who they are. Use Patrick's tool." She meant the reverse image search he'd told me about last week. That afternoon, I messaged Patrick. I sent him one of the Instagram pictures and asked if he could run it. "Give me a day," he said. Later that week, Marcus called to invite us to a small dinner at his place. His wife, Claire, had just come back from a work trip. Over pasta, the four of us talked about travel and work. Claire asked how Dominic and I met. I told her the short version, accidentally sitting at the same table in a crowded cafe. Marcus smiled. "That's very Dom. He doesn't leave things like that to chance." On the way home, Dominic drove in silence for a few minutes before saying, "Marcus likes you." I smiled, but my thoughts were still on the photos. The next day, Patrick sent me a message. "Found a few matches. Want to meet?" We met at a small sandwich shop near my office. He slid his laptop toward me. "This one's name is Rena," he said, pointing to one of the faces from the grid. "She works at your boyfriend's firm. Another is named Maya. Looks like she's a photographer. And this one," he paused. "I think she moved abroad. No recent activity." Seeing their names made them feel real in a way the photos hadn't. They weren't just faces. They had lives. That evening, Dominic and I went to an art opening with a few of his co-workers. Victor was there, along with Rena. She was friendly, asked me questions about my work, and mentioned a case they were working on. She had the same calm way of speaking she'd had at the dinner last week, and the same smile that pulled at my memory of the hidden photo. Driving home, I said, "Rena seems nice." "She's good at her job," Dominic replied. keeping his eyes on the road. I didn't mention that I already knew her name from Patrick's search. I didn't mention that I knew about Maya, or the woman who had moved away. I kept those pieces to myself, storing them like clues in a drawer. By the following week, I couldn't keep the names out of my head. Rena, Maya, and the woman who had moved away. I didn't know her name yet, but I could see her face in my mind every time I passed a mirror. Patrick had offered to keep looking, but I told him to wait. Part of me was scared of how many more there might be. On Tuesday, Evelyn invited me to a happy hour at a bar near her apartment. I almost said no, but I went. The crowd was loud, but she leaned across the table and said, "You can't just sit on this. People keep patterns for a reason." I asked her what she meant. She stirred her drink. Sometimes it's just preference, but sometimes it's about a person they lost or can't forget. You need to know which this is. The next evening, Dominic and I had dinner with Victor and his wife Naomi. They were warm hosts, serving roasted chicken and homemade bread. Over dessert, Naomi asked how long we'd been together. When I told her, she glanced at Victor and said, "He hasn't brought anyone around in years. At least, not to us." I filed that away. It wasn't proof of anything, but it added weight to the questions I'd been avoiding. 2 days later, Dominic mentioned that Marcus was hosting a small birthday gathering for Claire. "It'll be casual," he said. "They've invited a few friends." That Saturday, we walked into Marcus's apartment and were greeted by a mix of familiar and unfamiliar faces. Claire hugged me, then introduced me to 2 of her friends, Sophie and Daniel. We chatted about travel. Then Sophie turned to me and said, "You're with Dominic, right? I think I've seen you before, maybe online," I said, though I knew she hadn't. Her words stuck with me anyway. While Dominic and Marcus talked near the kitchen, I joined a group in the living room. A woman named Camille was telling a story about a wedding she'd attended. She had sharp eyes, quick to notice things. Later, when the group thinned, she asked quietly, "How did you and Dominic meet?" I told her, and she nodded slowly. I knew someone he dated a long time ago. Helena. The name felt heavy, like a stone dropped into water. I didn't show it on my face. "How long ago?" I asked. "Years," she said. They were serious. I think she moved away. I lost touch. Before I could ask more, Claire called Camille over to help with the cake, but that name, Helena, sat in my mind for the rest of the night. On Monday, I mentioned Helena to Patrick. "Do you have a last name?" he asked. I didn't. He sighed. "If you get one, I can find her." That week, I also met Maya. It wasn't planned. Dominic and I were at a book launch, and she was there with a group of photographers. She had the same features as Rena, similar hair, same kind of smile, but there was something sharper in her gaze, like she noticed more than she said. We shook hands. "Dominic's mentioned you," she said. I was sure he hadn't. When we got home, I asked him how he knew her. "From an event years ago," he said. We stayed in touch a little. His tone was casual, but I remembered her smile and the way her eyes had flicked over me, like she was measuring something. By then, I had a growing list in my phone. Rena, coworker. Maya, photographer. Unnamed woman, moved away. Helena, from years ago. Serious. Sophie, said she'd seen me before. Camille, knows about Helena. I kept looking at it, wondering if the pattern was about looks, or about replacing something, or someone. It was a Tuesday morning when I first saw Leah. I was rushing through the lobby of my office building, late for a client meeting, when I noticed her leaning against the wall near the elevators. She was looking down at her phone, but when she glanced up, her eyes found me right away. "You're Nora," she said, not a question. I slowed down, confused. "Yes. Do I know you?" She stepped closer, slipping her phone into her bag. "No, but we need to talk." Everything in her tone said it wasn't a casual suggestion. I checked the time and told her I had 10 minutes before my meeting. She nodded toward the cafe across the street. Inside, we found a small table near the window. She ordered tea, no sugar. I ordered coffee, milk only. "You're with Dominic," she said. I felt my shoulders tense. "I am." She studied me for a moment before speaking again. "You've noticed it, haven't you? That you're not the first, and that the others looked like you." I didn't answer. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she continued. "I just think you should know what you're in the middle of." She told me she'd known Dominic for years, but they'd never dated. "I was close to someone he was with," she said. "Helena." There was that name again. "Camille mentioned her," I said quietly. Leah gave a short laugh. "That doesn't surprise me." Camille always thought the whole thing was strange. I asked what she meant. Helena and Dominic were together in college. It was intense, but not in a messy way. They fit, or at least it looked that way. Then she got a job in another city. She left, and as far as I know, they never saw each other again. "What does that have to do with the others?" I asked. Leah's gaze didn't waver. "Every woman after her looked like her. Not exactly, but close enough. You included." I sat back in my chair. My mind went to Rena, Maya, and the unnamed woman who'd moved away. I thought about Sophie, saying she'd seen me before. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because Helena's cousin Clara is in town," Leah said. "If you want answers, she might give you more than I can." I wrote the name down in my phone. Clara, another thread in the list. When I got back to my office, I sent Patrick a message. "Find Helena. Last name unknown. Cousin named Clara." He replied with a thumbs up. That evening, Dominic suggested we meet Marcus and Claire for dinner. We went to a small Italian place. Marcus told a funny story about their first year of marriage. Claire laughed so hard she almost spilled her wine. At one point, Claire turned to me and said, "It's nice seeing Dom with someone who matches his energy." She meant it kindly, but the word matches stuck in my head. After dinner, as we were leaving, Victor called Dominic. He stepped away to take the call. Claire leaned in and said, "I met Helena once. She was sweet, very calm." Then Dominic returned, and the moment ended. Back home, I updated my list. Rena, co-worker. Maya, photographer. Unnamed woman moved away. Helena, serious, from years ago. Sophie, said she'd seen me before. Camille, knows Helena. Leah, warned me. Clara, Helena's cousin, in town. Claire, met Helena once. 9 names now. 9 people are connected in some way to the pattern. Lying in bed that night, I thought about Leah waiting in the lobby, about the certainty in her voice when she said I wasn't the first. I wondered how many more there had been, and how far back this went. Patrick called me on Thursday afternoon. "I found her," he said. "Helena Gray. Lives in Seattle now, works in marketing. And yes, she looks like you. I also found Clara, her cousin. She's in town for a few weeks." The next day, I met Clara at a quiet coffee shop near the park. She was tall, with the same hazel eyes Leah had mentioned. She studied me for a long moment before we even sat down. "You do look like her," she said finally. "It's unsettling." I asked her to tell me about Helena and Dominic. Clara stirred her coffee slowly. They met in college, 2nd year. She was studying literature and he was in law. He noticed her before she noticed him. Said she had a way of listening that made people feel like they mattered. They started dating a few weeks after they met. She smiled faintly. They were good together. Steady, not dramatic. Helena wasn't the type for big scenes. They spent a lot of time in cafes, bookstores, and walking around the city. She hated clubs, and so did he. I think they liked living in their own little world. "What happened?" I asked. Her father got sick. She was offered a job in another city. Good pay, good benefits. She took it so she could be closer to her family. Dominic wanted her to stay, but he didn't fight her decision. He said he understood. Clara's eyes narrowed. But I don't think he ever got over her leaving. After she moved, he stayed single for a while. Then he started dating again. And every woman he chose looked like her. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence. But then I met 2 of them, years apart, and they could have been sisters. I thought of Rena, Maya, the unnamed woman. "Did Helena know?" I asked. Clara shook her head. "No, I don't think anyone told her. We talked for another half hour. She gave me a few more details, where they'd gone on their first trip together, the name of the cafe where they spent weekends. I wrote everything down. That evening, Dominic and I had dinner with Naomi and Victor. Halfway through the meal, Naomi said, "Dom, remember that old law school event? Helena came with you. You introduced her to half the room." Dominic smiled faintly but didn't say much. I didn't press. The next day, Evelyn and I met for lunch. I told her about Clara in the cafe. Evelyn leaned forward. "You have to see the place. It might help you understand him better." So, on Sunday, I went. It was a small spot on a quiet street, the kind of cafe that hadn't changed in years. I sat at a corner table, ordered a coffee, and tried to picture them here. Dominic and Helena, sitting across from each other, talking about their week. I imagined her hand resting on the table the way Clara had described. I imagined him leaning forward slightly, listening, the way he still does with me. That night, Dominic came over. We cooked pasta together. While he grated cheese, I said, "I met someone who knows Helena." His hands paused for just a second. "Oh, her cousin," I said. "She told me about the two of you." He set the grater down and looked at me, and I shrugged. "You were serious. You didn't want her to leave." He was quiet for a long moment. "No, I didn't." Then he picked up the grater again, but she made her choice. We ate in near silence. I didn't push further, but as I lay in bed that night, I thought about Clara's words, about how she'd met women over the years who could have been Helena's sisters, and I wondered how many more there had been, how far this pattern stretched back. By the next week, the names in my phone had grown into a web. Rena, coworker; Maya, photographer; unnamed woman, moved away; Helena, the one from years ago; Sophie said she'd seen me before; Camille knew Helena; Leah warned me; Clara, Helena's cousin; Claire met Helena once; Victor hinted at his habits; Evelyn, my sounding board; Patrick, the one helping me search. 12 names now, each one a piece of the pattern. I didn't want to believe it was an obsession, but every conversation, every comment, every introduction kept pointing back to the same shape. That Friday night, Dominic and I went to a small birthday dinner for Naomi at her apartment. Victor was there, along with a few people I didn't know. One of them, a woman named Julia, joined us in the kitchen while we helped set out dessert. She was polite, asked about my job, and smiled in that now familiar way that made my stomach knot. When Dominic came in, she greeted him with a warm, knowing tone. I watched his face. Friendly, but guarded. It was as if they shared some quiet understanding I wasn't part of. On the way home, I stared out the car window, thinking about Clara's words, about Leah stopping me in the lobby, about Rena's scarf, and Maya's sharp gaze. The next morning, I decided I couldn't keep circling this. I needed to ask him. We met for brunch at a quiet cafe, not the one from his past with Helena, but somewhere neutral. Over coffee, I said, "I've met a lot of people connected to you lately. Some of them look like me." He didn't respond right away. He stirred his coffee, then set the spoon down. "You've been talking to people." "Yes," I said. "Leah, Clara, others." His eyes met mine. "And what did they tell you?" "That after Helena left, you dated women who looked like her. That I'm one of them." He leaned back in his chair. "Maybe I do have a type." "Is that a crime?" "It's more than a type," I said. "It's a pattern. You've been chasing the same face for years." For a moment, he looked genuinely tired. "Helena was important. I thought we'd spend our lives together. She left, and I didn't know how to move on. Maybe I never did." I asked. So am I just another copy of her? He shook his head. No, you're you. But maybe I noticed you because you reminded me of her. The words sat heavy between us. I paid for my coffee and stood up. I can't be with someone if I'm just a reminder of someone else. Even a little. He didn't try to stop me. Back at my apartment, I called Evelyn. I told her everything. What he said, what I felt. She listened quietly, then asked, "Do you think he could change?" "I don't know," I said. "But I don't think I should have to wait for him to." That evening, I packed the few things I kept at his place. A sweater, some books, a mug I liked. I wrote a short note. "I hope you find what you're looking for." I left the note and my key on his kitchen counter. I didn't take the frame from behind the books. It wasn't mine to take. Over the next week, Patrick sent me a few more matches from old photos. Women from years ago, each one with some echo of Helena. I didn't save them. One night, Evelyn and I had dinner with Marcus and Claire. They didn't mention Dominic, and I didn't bring him up. It felt strange at first, being in a room without him, but also lighter. Sometimes I still think about Leah in the lobby, about Clara's steady gaze across the coffee table, about the way Dominic looked when he finally admitted the truth. I don't know if Helena ever knew about the pattern. I don't know if Dominic will ever stop chasing it. But I do know this. When I see my reflection now, I'm only looking for myself. She left with more questions than answers. Was he chasing a ghost from his past? Or building the perfect future, one replica at a time? You've heard her side. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Was this love? Or something much darker? Let us know in the comments, and remember, sometimes the most dangerous patterns are the ones we don't see until it's too late.